It's the late summer of 1959, and the American teen scene is growing thanks to the marketing genius of Dick Clark and his leveraging of the local Philadelphia-based American Bandstand TV show as the forefront of a teen youth subculture that is clean-cut, fresh-faced, and overwhelmingly suburban and upper middle class. Clark's regulars on American Bandstand, local Philadelphia teens such as Pat Mulatieri, Billy Cook, Kenny Rossi, Arlene Sullivan, Carol Scalder-Ferry, Eddie Kelly, and arguably the most popular couple on the show, Bob Clayton and Justine Corelli, led the teenage world of late 1950s America, suburban 1950s America that is, in the way of fashions and dance steps, as the popular and unpaid regulars rubbed shoulders on Dick Clark's show with Bob Marcucci's stable of clean-cut and wholesome teen idols, Frankie Avalon and Fabian, along with other would-be contenders, all of whom would attempt to fill the vacuum left by the first wave of rock and roll singers who met their ends, whether career-wise or literally, in plane or automobile crashes, run-ins with the law, scandals involving adultery with underage minors, or even inductions into the Army.
Beginning his 2-year Army hitch courtesy of the Memphis Draft Board. Like any ex-civilian raw recruit, the king of rock and roll will be keeping time to non-hip bugle calls. Involuntarily retired, a gyrating guitarist's departure from the public eye left his blue jean fans all shook up, so we hear. But Elvis doesn't seem to mind at all.
Two of the top movies of 1959 starred former model turned actress Alexandra Zook, aka Sandra Dee, in A Summer Place, a story of troubled upper-crust New England teenagers caught in the throes of passion even as their own parents engaged in extramarital affairs, and Gidget, a coming-of-age, light-hearted romantic comedy that was the prototype of the latter beach party films of the mid-1960s, put out by American International Pictures that would star former teen idols Mouseketeer Annette Funicello and bandstand boy Frankie Avalon. Gidget was based on the 1957 novel by Frederick Kohner and was itself inspired by his daughter Kathy, in fact a cousin of the actress Susan Kohner, who actually worked with Sandra Dee in Imitation of Life that same year, and Kathy's relationship with Southern California beach bums and the surfing subculture. 1959's Gidget also illustrates the rift and the invisible wall that separated 1950s teens. One of the taglines for the advertising materials for Gidget included,
Columbia Pictures' Gidget, brought to the screen from the bestseller that proves a teenager can be delightfully juvenile without being delinquent.
Being juvenile does not have to mean delinquent, a reference to the earlier juvenile delinquent films of the 1950s, such as 1955's Rebel Without a Cause and Blackboard Jungle, when compared with the harmless wholesomeness of Gidget, which itself was promoted by Dick Clark. And it was that reference to delinquency that underlied the other 1950s teen world, a world that most 1950s suburban teenagers were generally unaware of, that of inner-city fighting youth gangs who existed at the same time as the wholesome, clean teen culture marketed by Dick Clark, and for whom Clark's clean-cut teen image for his regulars was an answer for parental fears regarding harder-edged rock and roll and the association with harder-edged teens. While many suburban teens of upper-middle-class America embraced Dick Clark, that was not necessarily the case with teens of the street culture of the 1950s inner city. As related by the recollections of the author of Mockingbird, a Puerto Rican warrior on the streets of New York. Could you elaborate on the kind of music that the Bops listened to, the kind of rock and roll they did not like, and the whys? The why.
Okay, they would listen to songs, for example, like the Italians, you had the Capris, there's a Moon Out Tonight, things like that. Then you had the Blacks, the Frankie Lyman, the Spaniels. And the Italians and the Blacks would get along in music they had groups that respected each other. And a guy by the name of Alan Freed, you familiar with Alan Freed?
Yes.
Well, Alan Freed, well, he's the king. He's the one that coined the word rock and roll.
Yeah.
And he would have both white and black, but they all sounded nice sounding music. Whereas Dick Clark would put on what we didn't like Frankie Avalon, Fabian, stuff like that. There was one girl in my neighborhood that she was cute. We talked to each other. I stopped talking to her when she came home one day with an IFIC button. IFIC button, when you went on Dick Clark's Saturday Night Show, they used Flavorific, and they would go like this. Oh my God, that would drive me insane. No, you weren't cool. You had to be like the Cadillacs, the Flamingos, the Teenagers, the Dubs. And that's what we were into.
So there was a clear line between like what the bops listened to and what I'm guessing these were mainstream, what do you call it? Upper middle class suburbanites who like Dick Clark.
We call them Patties, the Patty Boys.
Yeah.
It is most likely that it was this music scene that was being represented at the Old Trinity Mission dance on that Saturday evening of August 22, 1959, as members of the Sportsmen intruded upon the turf or territory of the Forsyth Street Boys and, giving insult to injury, danced with the girls who belonged to the Forsyths, the Debs of that gang, the word itself being a corruption of the word debutante.